Imagine this. You're standing in the snack aisle at 2 a.m., staring at 47 different flavors of chips. Salt and vinegar, jalapeno, mango, dragon fruit, artisanal, organic kale crunch. The freedom of choice feels exhilarating, until it slowly morphs into a mild existential crisis. Baruch Spinoza would be standing next to you in that aisle, calmly reminding you that your freedom to pick between jalapeno and kale chips is, well, kind of an illusion. According to him, every single craving, every single twitch in your hand as it reaches for the bag, is determined by causes stretching all the way back to the beginning of the universe. You're basically a cosmic bowling ball, knocked into motion, rolling toward kale chips before you even knew kale existed. But don't worry, Spinoza isn't here to make you depressed. Quite the opposite. He thought that by understanding how everything is connected, you could actually live a calmer, more joyful life. He was like the original mindfulness app, just with fewer soundscapes of whales singing. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, we're going to slip into Spinoza's world, the 17th century lens grinder, who dared to say freedom isn't real. God is basically the universe, and happiness comes not from free will, but from seeing how little free will we actually have. Don't worry, this will be soothing. It will also be funny. And maybe, just maybe, by the end, you'll feel less stressed about your midnight snack choices, because you'll realize the kale chips chose you. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and let's gently roll, like cosmic bowling balls, into Spinoza's philosophy. Picture Amsterdam in the middle of the 1600s. The canals are already there. Of course, because Amsterdam without canals would just be land. Merchants bustle across bridges with goods from every corner of the world. Ships return loaded with spices, silk, and maybe the occasional sailor who now deeply regrets his career choices. This is the Dutch Golden Age, a time when art, commerce, and philosophy all swirled together in one of Europe's most vibrant cities. Now, in the middle of all this activity, in a quiet workshop where the dust from glass grinding settles into every corner, sits Baruch Spinoza. If you had walked past him on the street, you might not have noticed anything unusual. He wasn't striding around like Descartes, announcing, "I think, therefore, I am," to anyone who would listen. He wasn't dressed like a wealthy merchant or painting like Rembrandt, trying to get the light just right on someone's slightly judgmental face. No, Spinoza looked ordinary. He was thin, with dark, curly hair, and he wore simple clothes. His presence was quiet, almost humble, and yet, in his mind, he was preparing to detonate ideas that would shake philosophy, theology, and even politics for centuries to come. Spinoza was born in 1632 to a Portuguese Jewish family. His parents were part of a community of Sephardic Jews who had fled the Inquisition in Portugal, where life as a Jew could quickly transform from uncomfortable to terrifying. In Amsterdam, they hoped for tolerance, and in many ways, they found it. Amsterdam was known as a relatively safe place for people of different faiths, a kind of 17th century safe haven for those who didn't want to be burned at the stake just for having slightly different opinions on God. The Jewish community in Amsterdam, however, was still tightly knit, cautious, and protective. They had to be. They were tolerated. Yes, but tolerance in the 1600s came with conditions. It was like being invited to a party on the condition that you didn't dance too wildly or mention politics. You could live, but you had to behave. And so, the community leaders were strict about preserving tradition. They wanted no trouble, no scandals, And definitely no radical young men questioning the foundations of religion itself. Spinoza. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, was just such a young man. From an early age, he showed signs of being brilliant. He studied Hebrew texts, scripture, and philosophy. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge. But unlike a sponge, he didn't just hold the information. He squeezed it out, twisted it around, and asked, "Wait, does this actually make sense?" You can imagine how that went down with the rabbis. By his 20s, Spinoza was already raising eyebrows. He began suggesting that maybe the Bible wasn't a direct transcript from God, but rather a historical document written by people. He argued that miracles weren't really miracles, they were just natural events that people didn't understand yet. For example, if lightning struck a tree, most people might say, "That was God being dramatic." Spinoza would say, "No, that was just electricity. Calm down." He questioned whether the soul was immortal, whether God was a person at all, and whether religious institutions were necessary for spiritual life. In short, he said the quiet part out loud, again and again, until the community could no longer ignore him. In 1656, when he was just 23 years old, the leaders of Amsterdam's Jewish community had had enough. They issued a writ of herem, a form of excommunication that banned Spinoza from their community. This was not a light slap on the wrist. The herem was severe. It forbade anyone from speaking to him, reading his works, or even being in his company. The document itself described him in language so fiery it could have doubled as barbecue instructions. He was declared cursed by day and cursed by night. Cursed when he lies down and cursed when he rises up. Basically, don't sit with him, don't talk with him, don't even wave at him across the canal. Imagine being 23 and suddenly cast out from your entire family, friends, and culture. For most people, this would have been devastating. And yet Spinoza accepted it with remarkable calm. Instead of fighting back or begging to return, he walked away. He began living quietly, supporting himself not as a rabbi or scholar, but as a craftsman grinding lenses for microscopes and telescopes. His exile became the foundation of his freedom. Ironically, being declared an outcast gave him the space to think freely, to explore ideas without worrying about being invited to Friday night dinner. Amsterdam at the time was filled with intellectual energy. It was home to merchants who brought not only goods but also ideas from around the globe. The printing presses churned out new books, pamphlets, and sometimes scandalous little essays that people whispered about in taverns. Philosophers gathered in coffee houses to argue about Descartes and the nature of the soul. In this bustling city, Spinoza carved out his own small corner of rebellion, yet it wasn't a loud rebellion. He didn't storm pulpits or shout from rooftops. His rebellion was quiet, almost serene. He lived modestly, avoided the spotlight, and rarely published under his own name during his lifetime. But beneath that calm exterior, he was writing some of the most daring philosophy ever conceived. His ideas were whispered about, smuggled across borders, and passed from hand to hand like contraband. Because, in a way, they were contraband. To argue that God and nature were one and the same, that miracles were illusions, that freedom was an illusion. These were not safe ideas in 17th century Europe. They were intellectual dynamite. Still, Spinoza's world was not just ideas and exile. It was also lenses. He spent countless hours grinding glass, shaping it so that others could peer into telescopes and see the stars, or look through microscopes and see the hidden life in a drop of water. There's a poetic beauty in this. While his philosophy was busy expanding the mental universe, his lenses were literally expanding the physical universe. He gave humanity new ways to see, both through ideas and through glass. And yet, the dust from his work likely damaged his lungs, contributing to the illness that would eventually shorten his life. He sacrificed his health so others could see more clearly, both literally and philosophically. Spinoza's Amsterdam, then, was a paradox. A city of tolerance, but with limits. A place where radical ideas could take root, but where those ideas could also get you banned from your community. And in the middle of it all sat Spinoza, quiet, exiled, shaping glass, and shaping philosophy. His rebellion was not a shout, but a whisper. Not a war, but a calm refusal to accept comforting illusions. It was the rebellion of a man who chose exile over compromise, clarity over tradition, and truth, even unsettling truth, over comfort. And so, as you drift off to sleep tonight, picture that quiet workshop in Amsterdam, the gentle scrape of glass being shaped, the soft glow of a lamp, and a man whose thoughts were as sharp and clear as the lenses he made. His exile became his freedom. His quiet rebellion became his legacy. And from that quiet room, the world would never see itself the same way again. When you think of a radical philosopher, maybe you imagine someone storming stages, writing fiery pamphlets, or yelling passionately in crowded squares, someone waving their arms around like a conductor of chaos, demanding attention. But Spinoza's version of radicalism was much quieter. It was the kind of radicalism that sneaks into your thoughts late at night, when you're brushing your teeth, and makes you say, "Wait, am I actually free? Or is the toothpaste choosing me?" Spinoza's life after his excommunication was defined by modesty. He didn't try to gain fame or wealth. He didn't seek revenge on those who had cast him out. Instead, he moved into small rooms, often in the houses of friends or sympathetic supporters. He lived simply, ate little, and spent most of his time working both with glass and with ideas. His income came mainly from lens grinding, which was delicate, painstaking work. Imagine spending hours hunched over, carefully shaping tiny pieces of glass while dust clogged your lungs. This wasn't glamorous. There were no fan clubs, no Instagram reels showing a day in the life of Spinoza. But it was honest work, and it allowed him the independence to think without depending on patrons or religious institutions. His radicalism showed up not in his lifestyle, but in his ideas. And these ideas terrified the religious authorities of his day. Why? Because Spinoza didn't just nibble at the edges of theological doctrines. He bit straight into the core. He claimed that God wasn't some supernatural person sitting on a throne, taking notes on your moral choices like a cosmic hall monitor. Instead, he declared that God is identical with nature itself. Everything that exists is part of God. Every tree, every star, every awkward sneeze you've ever had in a silent classroom, all of it is God. This was not the kind of God people were used to. It wasn't a God you could bribe with prayers or flatter with hymns. It was a God that was everywhere, everything, and unavoidable. You can imagine the theologians clutching their robes in horror. If God is just nature, then what happens to the church? What happens to miracles, divine punishments, the promise of eternal life? Spinoza swept all that aside. He believed that what people called miracles were simply events we didn't yet understand. If someone survived an illness, it wasn't divine intervention. It was just medicine, or luck, or the body healing itself. To Spinoza, calling something a miracle was like saying, "I don't get it, so it must be magic." And he wasn't having it. This perspective made him one of the most dangerous thinkers of his time. Dangerous. Not because he wanted to overthrow governments or start revolutions in the streets, but because he undermined the very foundations on which both religious and political authority rested. If you tell people that miracles are illusions, you take away one of the Church's most powerful tools. If you tell them that God is not a personal being but identical with nature, you remove the idea of divine commandments. And if you argue that free will itself is an illusion, you shake the very idea of moral responsibility. It was the philosophical equivalent of pulling the rug out from under centuries of tradition. Yet Spinoza himself remained calm, almost serene. He did not rant or rave. He wrote in careful, measured language, as if he were building a geometric proof rather than dismantling the religious worldview of Europe. And in fact, that's exactly what he did. His masterpiece, The Ethics, is written like a geometry textbook, with definitions, axioms, and propositions. It reads less like a fiery manifesto and more like Euclid's Elements. But within that dry structure lurked revolutionary claims. The theologians, of course, were not fooled. They recognized the danger immediately. Spinoza's works were banned, condemned, and whispered about. The Catholic Church put them on the index of forbidden books, which, let's be honest, was basically the 17th century version of a top 10 most interesting reads list. If your book was on that list, people suddenly wanted to read it even more. But still, the danger was real. Publishing under his own name could have brought Spinoza persecution, even violence. That's why he often published anonymously or delayed publication until after his death. Despite living so modestly, Spinoza's presence radiated something powerful. Those who knew him described him as gentle, humble, and kind. He was not out to attack people, but to liberate them from illusions. He believed that by understanding the true nature of reality, we could achieve a kind of peace, a freedom that came not from choosing among options, but from recognizing the necessity that governed everything. In other words, he thought joy came from seeing clearly, even if what you saw was unsettling. Grinding glass and writing philosophy might not seem heroic, but in Spinoza's case, it was. Each lens he shaped helped others see further into the world. Each sentence he crafted helped others see further into themselves. He was a radical without anger, a revolutionary without weapons, a thinker who terrified theologians simply by being calm, precise, and uncompromisingly honest. So as you drift deeper into relaxation, think of Spinoza in his modest room. His hands are dusty from glass, his table is covered with notes, and his mind is quietly undoing centuries of dogma. He doesn't shout, he doesn't rage, he simply sees and helps us see. And that, perhaps, is the calmest kind of radical there, island. If there's one thing we all like to believe about ourselves, it's that we are free. Free to choose, free to act, free to decide what we want and when we want it. Free to say, tonight, I'm going to be disciplined. I'll go to bed at 10 p.m. only to find ourselves still awake at 1 a.m. watching videos of raccoons trying to steal cat food. We like to think we're the captains of our own ships. But if Spinoza could sit next to you on your couch, maybe stealing some of your popcorn, he'd lean in and whisper, "You're not steering the ship. You're just along for the ride." For Spinoza, free will is an illusion. He thought every single thing we do has a cause, and those causes have their own causes, stretching back in an unbreakable chain that began long before we were born. Think about the way you decide on snacks. You might imagine yourself standing in front of the fridge, pondering your options, leftover pizza, some yogurt, maybe the bag of chips in the pantry. You tell yourself, I'm in charge. I'll decide what to eat. But Spinoza would say, no, your decision is the inevitable outcome of what your body craves, what you saw in a commercial earlier that day, what your parents fed you when you were 5, and the dominoes of cause and effect that stretch back to the beginning of the universe. In other words, the pizza is eating you as much as you are eating the pizza. Let's test this idea with something more relatable. Imagine your alarm goes off in the morning. You groan, reach for your phone, and hit the snooze button. In that moment, do you really feel free? You might say, yes, I freely chose to ignore the alarm and stay in bed. But Spinoza would argue that your so-called choice was determined by 1,000 little factors: how late you went to sleep, how dark the room is, whether you had an intense dream about being chased by a goose, and the sheer gravitational pull of warm blankets. Your body and environment pushed you towards snoozing, and you obeyed. You might feel like a powerful agent, but in reality, you're more like a leaf floating down a stream, pushed this way and that by currents you don't control. Another everyday example: texting your ex. You know you shouldn't. You've promised yourself you won't. You've deleted their number twice, maybe 3 times. And yet, there you are, at midnight, fingers typing out, "Hey, hope you're doing okay." Free choice? Spinoza would say, absolutely not. That text is the sum of your loneliness that evening, the nostalgic playlist you put on, the glass of wine you had, and the endless swirl of memories and desires you didn't choose but that live inside you like little invisible managers. By the time you sent the text, the choice had already been decided for you by causes far beyond your control. Now, here's where Spinoza is both a bit of a buzzkill and also strangely comforting. He insists that everything you do is determined: your food choices, your snoozes, your late-night texts, even the embarrassing things you've said in meetings. But he also says this realization can liberate you from guilt and anxiety. Think of it like this: if you spill coffee on yourself right before an important interview, you might spend hours later beating yourself up for being clumsy. Spinoza would gently tell you, that coffee spill was inevitable. Every molecule of coffee, every tremor in your hand, every thought distracting you, it all led to that moment. Stop blaming yourself. You're not a malfunctioning robot. You're a determined piece of nature, doing exactly what nature does. When Spinoza says we don't have free will, he's not suggesting we're puppets controlled by some malicious puppeteer. He's saying we're part of the natural order, and our actions flow from that order just as surely as the planets orbit the Sunday. You don't blame the moon for being pulled by Earth's gravity. You don't scold the tide for coming in and going out. In the same way, Spinoza would say you don't need to scold yourself for eating that third cookie. You were always going to eat that cookie. And maybe that thought, instead of being depressing, lets you relax a little. But here's the twist. Although he denies free will in the usual sense, Spinoza doesn't think we're powerless. In fact, he says real freedom comes not from pretending we can choose without causes, but from understanding the causes that move us. If you know why you keep snoozing, you might go to bed earlier. If you know why you text your ex, you might listen to that playlist with a friend instead of alone. Knowledge of causes gives you a different kind of freedom. Not the freedom of randomness, but the freedom of clarity. So maybe the next time you're faced with a choice, whether it's kale chips versus jalapeno chips, or whether to check your phone at 2 a.m., you can hear Spinoza's calm voice in your mind. This isn't really a choice. It's a chain reaction. But if you understand the chain, you can work with it instead of against it. And perhaps, in that understanding, there is a deeper peace, soothing. Isn't it? The idea that every choice, from the cosmic to the trivial, unfolds exactly as it must. You don't need to carry the burden of absolute freedom. You are part of the grand unfolding of nature, drifting gently, like a leaf on a stream. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge can help you drift more easily into sleep. Close your eyes and imagine the entire universe. Not just the stars you can see, not just the galaxies scientists have photographed, but every single thing that exists. The oceans, the trees, the clouds, the cat currently knocking a glass off your counter. All of it. Now imagine that all these things are not separate, but part of one vast, infinite whole. That's Spinoza's vision. Everything is connected, everything is one, and everything is divine. For Spinoza, the word God didn't mean what most people in the 17th century thought it meant. It wasn't an old man with a beard handing out commandments or performing miracles on weekends. For Spinoza, God is nature itself. Not nature as in just forests and rivers, but nature with a capital N. The entire universe, everything that exists, seen and unseen, from the tiniest atom to the largest galaxy. When Spinoza says God, he means the infinite substance of reality itself. This was radical, even scandalous, because it blurred the line between creator and creation. Most religions said God made the world, then stood apart from it, like an artist painting a canvas. Spinoza said, no, God is the canvas. God is also the paint, the brush, and even the hand that holds it. In fact, God is the entire art gallery. There's no outside. There's no separation. Everything that exists is God expressing itself in infinite forms. Think of it like a vast ocean. Each of us is a wave, rising and falling, temporary in form, but inseparable from the ocean itself. You might think, I'm an individual wave. Look at me go. But Spinoza would remind you, you are also the ocean. When the wave falls back, it hasn't disappeared. It was never separate to begin with. This view is called pantheism, the belief that God and the universe are one and the same, and it terrified the religious authorities of Spinoza's time. If God is everything, then God isn't judging us. If God is nature, then prayers don't change outcomes any more than you can pray the sun to stop shining. Miracles vanish, divine punishments dissolve, and the entire structure of organized religion starts to wobble like a three-legged chair. No wonder Spinoza was called an atheist, even though he insisted he was not denying God but redefining God. But here's the beautiful part of Spinoza's vision. If everything is God, then everything is sacred. The tree outside your window, the laughter of a child, the taste of bread, even the awkward silence in a conversation, all of it is divine expression. There's no need to search for God in faraway places or hidden mysteries. God is right here, in the ordinary and the everyday. It also means everything is connected. Your thoughts are connected to your body to the air you breathe, the air to the plants that produce it, the plants to the soil to the stars that exploded billions of years ago to create the elements in that soil. You are not an isolated being. You are a strand in the infinite web of existence. The atoms in your body were once in stars, and one day, long after you're gone, they will be in something else. Maybe a tree, maybe a bird, maybe another person. This perspective can be deeply calming. Instead of seeing yourself as a lonely creature struggling to find meaning, You see yourself as part of something infinite, something that cannot be broken or lost. You are not outside of nature, trying to control it. You are nature. You are God's expression, just like everything else. And there's humor in this too. Imagine scolding your cat for knocking over your glass, then realizing, according to Spinoza, your cat is God, the glass is God, the floor is God, and your annoyance is also God. In that moment, maybe you don't get angry, maybe you laugh, because you see that all of it, the mischief, the mess, the cleanup, is one vast divine dance. Of course, Spinoza's idea that everything is God also challenges how we think about individuality. If we're all part of one infinite substance, then the boundaries we draw between me and you, between human and animal, between sacred and profane, are more porous than we realize. We are temporary patterns in the infinite, like ripples in water. Recognizing this can bring humility, but also comfort. Yes, our individual lives are short, but we belong to something eternal. So as you drift towards sleep, picture yourself not as a lonely person in bed, but as a wave in the ocean of existence. The blankets around you are part of it. The sounds outside your window are part of it. Even your drifting thoughts are part of it. You don't need to reach out to find connection. You already are connection. You are part of the infinite substance that Spinoza called God, and perhaps, in recognizing this, you can relax a little more deeply. You don't have to hold yourself apart. You don't have to search for meaning outside yourself. You are already inside it. You are already the ocean, already the canvas, already the infinite. Everything is connected, and everything is divine. Let's start with something familiar. Maybe you're lying in bed, and your cat has decided that your ribcage is the perfect place to settle. Cats have a way of doing this, choosing the most inconvenient, slightly suffocating spot possible, and then purring as if they're the ones doing you a favor. You look at this small, fluffy tyrant, and you think, this is a separate creature. This is my cat. It has its own little mind, its own paws, and an uncanny ability to stare at a blank wall at 3 a.m., as if communing with ghosts. But Spinoza would shake his head and say, no, your cat is not separate. Your cat is not some independent little furball floating in the universe, disconnected from you. Your cat is an expression of the same infinite substance that you are. In fact, your cat is God. And before you let that thought inflate your cat's ego even further, remember that you too are God, as is your pillow, your blanket, and even the Wi-Fi router blinking softly in the corner of the room. This is where Spinoza's ideas about substance and modes come in. He believed that everything we see, touch, taste, and even imagine is part of one single substance. That substance is infinite, self-sustaining, and all-encompassing. He called it God, or nature. Not two things, but one and the same reality. So, how do cats and Wi-Fi fit into this cosmic picture? Let's unpack it gently. Imagine substance as the ultimate pizza dough. You roll it out, and from it, you can make any kind of pizza you like. Thin crust, deep dish, stuffed crust with cheese that burns the roof of your mouth. Every possible pizza starts from the same dough. The dough is substance, the infinite foundation. Now, the specific pizzas that get made, the pepperoni pizza you eat at midnight, the margarita slice your friend insists is superior, the pineapple pizza that divides humanity into two warring factions, those are modes. They are expressions of the dough, temporary forms taken on by something deeper and more fundamental. Spinoza thought the universe worked like that. Substance is the infinite reality, and everything in it, your cat, your Wi-Fi, Your leftover pizza from last night is a mode. The cat is not separate from the substance. It is substance in the form of cat. The pizza slice is not separate from the substance. It is substance in the form of gooey cheese and tomato sauce. Even the Wi-Fi router, stubbornly refusing to give you a stable signal during your Zoom call, is substance taking on the form of blinking plastic and mysterious invisible waves. You see, Spinoza wanted us to stop thinking of ourselves as isolated little units, cut off from each other and from the world. He wanted us to understand that we are all expressions of the same infinite reality. When you pet your cat, you're not just interacting with another being, you are substance touching substance. When you take a bite of pizza, you are substance tasting itself in cheesy form. And when you lose Wi-Fi in the middle of streaming a show, you are simply experiencing one mode of substance reminding another mode of substance. That patience is a virtue. The beauty of this idea is that it dissolves the hard boundaries we draw between ourselves and the world. Instead of saying, "This is me, and that is my cat," Spinoza would say, "This is one infinite substance, expressing itself in both human and feline form." And while that might not make your cat less annoying at 5 a.m., it does give you a sense of connection, a sense of being woven into a grand tapestry where everything belongs. Think of your Wi-Fi again. The signal spreads invisibly through the air, connecting your phone, your laptop, your smart toaster, that probably didn't need to be smart in the first place. You don't see the connections, but they're there, holding everything in one web. Substance is like that, an invisible, infinite network that holds everything together. Every mode, whether it's you scrolling through your phone or your cat demanding food, it will ignore 5 minutes later, is part of that network. And here's a funny thought. If substance is infinite, then even the pizza you regretted eating at 2 a.m. is divine. The indigestion that follows, also divine. The sudden realization that you've eaten cold pizza 3 nights in a row and maybe should buy vegetables, yep, divine too. Spinoza's vision doesn't leave anything out. It doesn't carve the world into sacred and profane, holy and unholy, good and bad. It says, it's all God, all of it, even pineapple on pizza. That's the kind of radical inclusivity that made Spinoza so dangerous to the religious authorities of his time. By collapsing the distinction between creator and creation, he left no room for miracles, no space for divine intervention that breaks the laws of nature. For Spinoza, nature itself is the miracle, the endlessly unfolding forms of the infinite substance. So next time your cat jumps on your laptop and closes your essay with one furry swipe, remember Spinoza. Your cat isn't just misbehaving. Your cat is a mode of God interfering with another mode of God, reminding you, perhaps, that the infinite substance does not take deadlines as seriously as you do. And when you reach for pizza afterward in frustration, that too is the universe expressing itself, slice by slice. All of it, from the purr to the pepperoni to the blinking Wi-Fi router, is one grand expression of the infinite. And when you recognize that, maybe you can soften your grip on the need to control and just sink back into the flow of it all. Imagine a long line of dominoes stretching out in front of you. They snake around corners, climb up little ramps, and spiral into complicated patterns. Someone tips the very first domino, and one by one, the rest begin to fall. The clatter is steady, inevitable, hypnotic. Each domino falls because the one before it fell, and once the chain has started, you can't stop it. That's how Spinoza thought of life. An unbroken chain of causes and effects, each one determined by the ones that came before. Think of your own morning routine. You wake up to the alarm. Why did you wake up groggy? Because you went to bed too late. Why did you go to bed late? Because you fell into a rabbit hole of videos about penguins stealing rocks from each other's nests. Why did you watch those videos? Because earlier that day, a friend mentioned penguins, which reminded you of a documentary you saw years ago, which was only made because a film crew happened to go to Antarctica, which itself was funded by. And on the chain stretches. By the time you're groggy at 7 a.m., the dominoes have already fallen in such a way that your bleary eyes are inevitable. Spinoza saw everything this way. Your choices, your moods, your actions, all of them are links in a causal chain that stretches back not just hours or days, but centuries and even to the very beginning of the universe. That cup of coffee you reach for in the morning isn't just a free act of will. It's the product of your tiredness, your taste preferences, the existence of coffee plants in Ethiopia centuries ago, the global trade that brought beans across oceans, and the invention of coffee machines. You didn't simply choose coffee. Coffee chose you through an intricate web of causes. This might sound suffocating at first, like you're trapped in a script you didn't write. But Spinoza thought understanding determinism could actually be liberating. Think of the domino chain again. If you believe each domino falls randomly, life feels chaotic and unpredictable. But once you see the cause, once you understand that each fall is connected to the last, the pattern makes sense. The sound of the dominoes becomes soothing, predictable, almost musical. Picture another example. You stub your toe on the coffee table. You yelp, curse, and briefly consider that the table is out to get you. But Spinoza would remind you, this wasn't random. The table was where it was because you put it there. You stubbed your toe because you were distracted, probably thinking about pizza, which you were craving because of an ad you saw earlier, which was made because some marketing executive ate pizza as a child and grew up to love it. The causes line up like dominoes, right down to your poor toe throbbing in the present moment. Even emotions, Spinoza said, are determined. If you feel sudden irritation in traffic, it's not because you freely chose to be annoyed. It's because of your tiredness, your past experiences, your expectations, your upbringing, and even the weather. The irritation is the next domino in a long line of causes. Once you see it that way, you don't have to feel so guilty for being upset. You can step back, observe the dominoes falling, and think, yes, of course, the universe arranged it this way. Spinoza's determinism isn't cold. It's gentle, almost lullaby-like. It tells you that you're not separate from the flow of causes. You are the flow. Everything that happens to you, everything you do, is the unfolding of the universe in its lawful, inevitable way, and there's comfort in that. When you lie awake at night replaying mistakes, what you said in that meeting, how awkward you felt at that party, Spinoza invites you to see them as dominoes. You didn't create those moments ex nihilo. They were determined by everything that came before. You can no more stop that chain retroactively than you can stop gravity. And if you can't stop it, maybe you can let go. Forgive yourself and fall asleep, knowing that it all happened as it must. The dominoes keep falling, endlessly, quietly. Each one follows the last, and each one leads to the next. In the soft rhythm of their motion, you can find peace. Spinoza's world isn't one of chaos, but of order, an order so vast that even your late-night pizza cravings and stubbed toes belong to it. When people first hear Spinoza say that free will doesn't exist, that every choice you think you're making is actually the result of an endless chain of causes beyond your control, the reaction is often, wow, that's depressing. It feels like someone telling you Santa Claus isn't real, only worse. Because instead of losing a jolly man with presents, you're losing the idea that you are in charge of your own life. At first glance, Spinoza's vision seems to strip away everything that makes us feel human, unique, and responsible. But if you sit with his thought a little longer, you start to notice something surprising. Instead of despair, there's a strange, almost soothing comfort in realizing you're not in control. Imagine being on a roller coaster. If you thought you were the one steering, you'd probably panic. You'd notice every sharp turn, every sudden drop, and think, "Oh no, what if I mess this up?" But once you realize the track is fixed, that the ride is carrying you where it must, you can lean back and let the motion take you. You might even enjoy it. Spinoza's determinism works like that. You don't have to be the anxious driver of life's roller coaster. You are a passenger, and the track is already set. That realization can be profoundly calming. Think about how much of your mental energy is spent regretting past decisions. You lie awake replaying that awkward thing you said in a meeting, or wondering if you should have taken a different job, or gone to a different school, or maybe ordered a salad instead of that extra-large pizza with double cheese. Spinoza says, stop tormenting yourself. Those decisions were not random acts of free will. They were determined by everything leading up to them. Given the exact same causes, you could not have acted differently. So, what's the point of endless regret? The domino fell exactly as it had to. You can let it go. This doesn't mean Spinoza wants you to shrug at every mistake and say, "Well, the universe made me do it." He's not handing out get out of jail free cards for bad behavior. What he's offering is a way to step back and see your actions and the actions of others with greater compassion. If your friend snaps at you, instead of thinking, "She freely chose to be mean," you can see it as the product of her fatigue, her stress, her upbringing, the traffic she sat in, and countless other causes. That doesn't excuse it, but it helps you understand it. And understanding softens the sting. There's another layer of comfort here, too. Realizing you're not in control means you don't have to carry the crushing burden of believing you're responsible for absolutely everything. Have you ever felt paralyzed by the need to make the right choice? Choosing a career path, a partner, a place to live it, can feel overwhelming, as if one wrong move will ruin your life forever. Spinoza lifts some of that pressure. He says the choices you make will unfold as they must, shaped by causes beyond your awareness. That doesn't mean life is meaningless. It means you don't have to agonize over the fantasy of being an all-powerful chooser. You can only ever do what the causes inside and outside you determine, and there's a deep exhale in that realization. It also helps with forgiveness. If someone hurt you years ago, and you still carry that pain, Spinoza's vision can help shift your perspective. He'd say, that person acted out of causes that shaped them. They didn't wake up with pure, absolute free will and decide, "Today I shall be cruel." Their action flowed from who they were at that moment, shaped by everything that came before. Again, it doesn't excuse harm, but it opens the possibility of seeing the person as part of the same determined universe you are, subject to the same laws of cause and effect. And forgiveness, or at least less bitterness, can follow from that understanding. Some people worry that without free will, life is drained of meaning. But Spinoza thought the opposite. If you stop worrying about whether you're free in some ultimate sense, you can focus on understanding the causes that move you. And in that understanding lies a new kind of freedom, what he called freedom through necessity. Imagine again the roller coaster. You can fight against every twist and turn, or you can learn to feel how the ride flows, anticipate it, and move with it. That second way is Spinoza's freedom. Not freedom from causes, but freedom in recognizing and aligning with them. There's humor in this too. If you spill coffee on your shirt 5 minutes before an important meeting, you could spiral into shame, thinking, "Why am I so clumsy?" Or, with Spinoza's wisdom, you could shrug and think, "The universe wanted this brown stain. Who am I to resist the cosmic plan?" Suddenly, instead of guilt, there's a smile. The stain is no less annoying, but your relationship to it has changed. This perspective even helps with the fear of death. If everything is part of one infinite substance, then your individual life, while finite, is never really separate from the whole. You didn't come from outside the universe, and you won't go outside of it. You are a mode of the infinite, and when your wave falls back into the ocean remains. Realizing you're not in control of life and death doesn't make life less meaningful. It can make it more precious. Every breath, every laugh, every bite of pizza is part of the infinite dance of substance. So maybe Spinoza isn't depressing at all. Maybe he's a relief. You don't have to be the absolute master of your fate. You don't have to carry regret like a backpack full of rocks. You don't have to live with constant anger at others. You are a domino in the chain, a wave in the ocean, a passenger on the ride. And once you accept that, once you let go of the fantasy of absolute control, you can find peace. The comfort comes not from denying reality, but from embracing it. The ride is already in motion. All you need to do is lean back, breathe, and let it carry you. Spinoza was not just a philosopher of big cosmic ideas like God, nature, and determinism. He was also deeply interested in something far more intimate and familiar: emotions. He wanted to understand why we feel what we feel, why we get carried away by passions, and how we might live more peacefully with them. His analysis of emotions wasn't written in the style of self-help books, but you can think of him as one of the earliest psychologists, someone who mapped out the mechanics of moods long before therapy apps and mindfulness podcasts existed. Spinoza divided emotions into two categories: passive and active. Passive emotions are the ones that happen to you, the ones where you feel swept away, like being caught in a storm without an umbrella. Active emotions are those that arise when you understand the causes of what's happening and respond with clarity. The difference is not in the emotions themselves, but in your relationship to them. If you're ruled by your emotions without understanding them, you're passive. If you understand where they come from, you start to become active. Take envy, for example. Imagine scrolling through social media and seeing your friend on vacation in Greece, sipping cocktails while you're stuck at home, reheating leftover pasta. You feel envy. It flares up almost instantly. That's a passive emotion. You didn't choose it. It grabbed you. Now, if you step back and say, "Of course I feel this way. I'm tired. I've had a long week, and I want a break too." Their trip doesn't diminish my life. It just triggers a desire in me. Then you've started to transform the passion into an active emotion. You haven't erased the envy, but you've taken a little power back by understanding it. Spinoza believed that most of the time, we're slaves to our passions. Anger, fear, jealousy, sadness, these emotions surge through us and dictate our actions. You get cut off in traffic, and before you know it, your blood pressure spikes. Your hands grip the wheel, and you're inventing creative new vocabulary. You don't stop to think, what chain of causes led this person to cut me off? You just feel rage. That's passivity. But Spinoza thought we could gradually shift. By studying our emotions, observing them, and tracing their causes, we could loosen their grip. This doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means learning their logic. For Spinoza, emotions are not mysterious or irrational. They follow the same laws of cause and effect as everything else. Your anger in traffic is determined by your expectation of order on the road, your stress level that day, your memories of past close calls, even the caffeine in your system. If you see those causes, the anger doesn't vanish, but it becomes less absolute. Consider love. Spinoza described love as joy, accompanied by the idea of an external cause. In other words, when something increases your power to act, when it fills you with energy and vitality, you feel joy. And when you connect that joy to someone else, you call it love. Imagine a partner who makes you laugh, who supports you, who shares pizza with you at midnight. The joy you feel in their presence is love, because you connect the joy to them. Spinoza wasn't trying to reduce love to mechanics. He thought love was beautiful, but he wanted us to see that emotions, even the loftiest ones, have causes we can understand. Fear, by contrast, is sadness accompanied by the idea of a future evil. You're about to give a presentation, and you imagine yourself stumbling over words, forgetting your slides, and being judged by your boss. The thought of future pain creates sadness now. That's fear. Again, Spinoza didn't dismiss fear as silly. He just wanted us to understand its logic, so we could handle it better. What's remarkable is how modern his approach feels. Today, therapists talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people recognize the thoughts behind their emotions. Spinoza was doing something similar centuries earlier. He urged us to step back, observe our emotions, and see them not as random storms, but as natural processes with causes. Humor helps here too. Imagine your mood swings throughout a day. You wake up optimistic, then spill coffee on yourself and curse existence, then get a nice text and feel elated, then open your email and sink into despair, then watch a funny video and feel alive again. To Spinoza, this is just the play of passions. You're like a boat tossed on waves, each emotion pushing you in a new direction. But once you realize the waves are not random, once you see they're shaped by winds and currents, you stop feeling like a victim of the sea. You start to become a sailor. Spinoza never promised we could eliminate passions. He knew humans are emotional creatures, but he believed we could shift from being slaves to emotions to being participants in them, from being dragged to being guided. That shift brings peace, because you stop fighting your emotions as enemies and start understanding them as parts of nature. Your envy, your anger, your joy, your fear, they are all natural, all determined, all explainable. And in seeing that, you gain a little distance, a little calm, a little freedom. So as you lie in bed, maybe noticing your own emotions, worry about tomorrow, regret about today, maybe even irritation at your cat jumping on your feet, remember Spinoza. These feelings are not random punishments or signs of weakness. They are determined expressions of nature, shaped by causes stretching far and wide. You don't have to fear them. You can watch them, learn from them, and gradually, gently, live more calmly with them. Imagine sitting down for a quiet evening. You tell yourself, I'm just going to relax, maybe drink some tea, maybe read. You pick up your phone, and before you know it, you're an hour deep into Instagram reels about cooking hacks you'll never use, travel destinations you can't afford, and dogs wearing sunglasses. Eventually, you close the app, blink, and wonder, wait, did I choose that? Spinoza would say, absolutely not. He'd tell you that what just happened was a perfect example of being enslaved to your passions. You thought you were free, freely choosing to scroll, freely choosing to linger on that video of someone making a 5-layer cake. But really, you were carried along by emotions, impulses, and external triggers. You weren't steering. You were being steered. This is what Spinoza meant when he said that most of us live not in freedom, but in bondage to our passions. Passions aren't just emotions. They are emotions that control us without our understanding. They're like invisible strings tugging us this way and that. Anger rises, and suddenly you've snapped at someone before realizing why. Envy hits, and you're spiraling into comparisons with strangers online. Fear creeps in, and you're already plotting an escape from situations that haven't even happened yet. These emotions pull you, twist you, shape your actions, and you believe you're free, even though you're not. Think of envy. It might be the most Instagram-fueled passion of all. You see someone lounging on a beach in Bali while you're eating cereal in your pajamas, and envy floods you. You didn't invite it. You didn't plan it. It arrived, like an uninvited guest barging into your living room and eating all your snacks. And once envy is there, it directs you. Maybe you scroll harder. Maybe you sulk. Maybe you feel compelled to post your own picture to compete. All the while, you think you're acting freely. But Spinoza would shake his head and say, "You're being moved, not moving yourself." Or take anger. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly your blood pressure spikes. You honk, maybe yell, maybe imagine yourself starring in an action movie where justice is served on the highway. Did you choose that? Not really. It was automatic, determined by your body's reaction, your expectations, your stress level, and countless prior experiences. Anger took the wheel. For a moment, you were a passenger in your own car, in more ways than one. Spinoza compared this kind of existence to slavery. Harsh word, but he used it intentionally. When you're ruled by passions, you're not the master of yourself. You're a captive, pushed around by forces you don't understand. You might feel free because you say, "I do what I want." But if what you want is entirely determined by external triggers and passing moods, is that really freedom? It's more like being a puppet who thinks they're the puppeteer. This is why he argued that most of us live in bondage without realizing it. We're constantly reacting to ads, to social media, to our environment, to our bodies. That impulse to check your phone every 3 minutes. Passion. That sudden urge to eat cookies at midnight. Passion. That fight you picked with your sibling about something trivial. Passion. And it's not just modern distractions. In Spinoza's time, passions enslaved people too. Imagine being terrified of comets because you think they're omens from God, or being consumed by jealousy because your neighbor's tulips bloomed brighter than yours. Human history is littered with examples of people doing outrageous things under the sway of passions, wars started by anger, betrayals sparked by envy, despair, leading to ruin. Spinoza saw all of this and said, "Until we understand our emotions, we are not free." It's easy to laugh about Instagram envy or cookie cravings, but the point is serious. Passions can rob us of peace, distort our judgments, and keep us from living joyfully. They enslave us not with chains of iron, but with chains of impulse. And because we think we're free, we don't resist. We accept the chains as normal life. Now, Spinoza wasn't a killjoy. He didn't say, "Stop having emotions." He knew emotions are part of being human. He wasn't asking us to turn into cold robots who never feel anger or joy. He simply wanted us to see the difference between being swept away and being aware. Because awareness opens the door to a different relationship with our passions. one that leads toward a gentler kind of freedom. But for now, remember this. The next time you find yourself halfway through a mindless scroll or midway through a rant you didn't intend to have, you can smile and think, "Ah, yes, here I am, a puppet of passion." And maybe, just maybe, that recognition is the first tug at the strings. If most of us are enslaved by passions, as Spinoza claimed, is there any hope? Are we doomed to spend our lives like boats, tossed on emotional storms, never steering, only being carried? Spinoza thought there was hope, but it wasn't the kind of freedom most people imagine. It wasn't about breaking all chains, rising above all emotions, or magically becoming invulnerable to anger, envy, or fear. His path to freedom was subtler, humbler, and in some ways, more realistic. It was about understanding emotions instead of being ruled by them. Let's return to the image of scrolling on your phone late at night. At first, it feels like you're just reacting, driven by impulses you barely notice. But then you pause and think, why am I scrolling? You realize you're tired, maybe lonely, maybe restless. You see that the endless feed is tugging at your desire for novelty, for stimulation, for connection. That realization doesn't erase the urge, but it changes your relationship to it. Suddenly, instead of being dragged, you're observing. That tiny shift from blind reaction to awareness is the start of Spinoza's freedom. For him, the key was knowledge. Not knowledge in the sense of memorizing trivia or calculating equations, but knowledge of causes. When you understand why you feel what you feel, the emotion loses some of its power to control you. You can still feel envy, anger, or sadness, but you're less likely to be whipped around by them. It's like standing on the shore and watching the waves instead of being caught under them. The waves still exist, but you're no longer drowning. This is why Spinoza compared understanding emotions to a kind of healing. If passions are chains, knowledge is the file that starts to wear them down. It's not instant liberation, it's gradual, patient work. Each time you understand an emotion, you weaken its hold. Each time you trace its cause, you regain a little space to act, instead of merely reacting. Take anger again. Someone snaps at you. The immediate reaction is to snap back, to mirror the passion with passion. But if you pause and think, they're tired, stressed, maybe having a bad day, suddenly your anger cools. You see the cause behind their words. You don't have to approve of it, but you also don't have to be enslaved by it. You can choose a calmer response. That choice, born of understanding, is Spinoza's version of freedom. It's important to note that Spinoza didn't promise perfect serenity. He wasn't selling enlightenment or advertising a quick fix. He knew humans will always feel passions, but he believed we could shift the balance. Instead of living 90% ruled by emotions and 10% by understanding, maybe we could flip the ratio over time. Maybe we could live with more awareness, more clarity, more peace. And here's where humor helps. Imagine you're jealous of someone's perfect vacation photos. You catch yourself thinking, I wish that were me. Then you pause and remember Spinoza. You say, ah, yes, envy, my old chain. You're here because I crave joy and I think they have it. But their cocktail in Santorini doesn't actually reduce my ability to enjoy leftover lasagna. Suddenly, you chuckle. The envy is still there, but it has less bite. You've shifted from passive to active. This process can feel slow, but it's cumulative. Each time you understand an emotion, you carve out a little more space for calm. Over time, you build resilience, not by suppressing feelings, but by knowing them. You start to realize that the storms of passion aren't endless hurricanes. They're weather patterns with causes, and knowing the weather makes it easier to sail. Spinoza called the highest form of this awareness the intellectual love of God. By this, he meant a deep understanding of how everything is connected, how every emotion, every event, every person is part of the infinite substance of nature. When you see that clearly, even painful emotions take on a different light. Instead of resenting them, you see them as necessary expressions of reality. You don't fight against the tide, you float with it, understanding it as part of the whole. Of course, in practice, this might look less lofty and more ordinary. It might mean forgiving yourself for late-night snacking, recognizing your stress at work without lashing out, or breathing through anxiety by naming its causes. Each small act of understanding is a step on the path. The freedom isn't absolute. It's freedom, sort of, but it's enough to make life gentler. So Spinoza's promise is not that you will escape passions entirely, but that you can live with them wisely. You can stop being their slave and start being their companion. You can listen to them, learn from them, and let them pass without dragging you under. It's a modest path, but also a realistic one. And sometimes, the modest path is the one that truly brings peace. So as you drift toward sleep, let your own emotions rise and fall. Don't fight them. Don't judge them. Simply notice them, trace them, and smile at their causes. In that gentle awareness, you are already walking Spinoza's path to freedom. There is a certain kind of chaos that comes from not knowing why we feel what we feel. You wake up in a sour mood. You open the blinds and sigh at the weather. Someone says, "Good morning," and you grunt like an offended walrus. Hours later, you might realize, "Oh, I slept poorly," or, "Oh, I'm anxious about a conversation later." But in the moment, it just feels like a fog, an unclear, confusing heaviness that pulls you in directions you don't understand. Spinoza thought this kind of confusion was at the heart of our suffering. We don't just feel emotions, we misinterpret them, get tangled in them, and let them drag us around because we don't know their causes. For Spinoza, knowledge was the way out. Knowledge didn't mean stuffing your brain with trivia, though I'm sure he'd be proud of you if you know the capital of Bolivia or the chemical formula for caffeine. For him, knowledge meant clarity. It meant seeing why things happen, why you feel as you do, and how everything fits into the larger web of causes. When you move from confusion to clarity, the passion loses its sting. It doesn't vanish, but it transforms into something lighter, calmer, less frightening. Imagine being jealous. Your partner laughs at a message on their phone, and suddenly, jealousy leaps out like a jack-in-the-box. You feel tight, restless, suspicious. If you stay in confusion, the jealousy takes over you. Snap, accuse, spiral. But if you step back and gain clarity, "Oh, my jealousy comes from fear of being abandoned, from memories of past hurt, from my own insecurity," the emotion shifts. It becomes something you can breathe through. Spinoza would say, you've moved from being passive to being active. The knowledge hasn't erased your jealousy, but it's transformed it into an emotion you can handle with more dignity. He thought all of human life could be divided this way, into confused, partial knowledge that enslaves us, and clear, adequate knowledge that liberates us. And he believed the more we understand, the freer we become. Think of it like trying to walk in a cluttered room with the lights off. You bump into furniture, stub your toe, trip over the cat. That's life in confusion, painful, clumsy, reactive. But then someone flips the light switch. You still have to move through the room, but now you can see the obstacles, step around them, maybe even smile at the cat before it trips you on purpose anyway. Knowledge is that light switch. This is why Spinoza's philosophy feels oddly modern. Today, we talk about naming your emotions as a way to regulate them. Therapists tell us, when you name it, you tame it. Spinoza was saying the same thing centuries earlier. He believed that every confused feeling could be clarified by tracing it back to its causes. Anger isn't random. It's caused by frustration, unmet expectations, physical stress. Sadness isn't random. It flows from loss, fear, fatigue. Clarity takes the mystery away. And when the mystery fades, so does the helplessness. The liberation he promised isn't dramatic. You won't suddenly become immune to sadness or irritation. You won't walk around glowing with perfect serenity, like some mystical guru who never gets annoyed at traffic. But you will carry your emotions differently. Instead of being swept away, you'll observe them with understanding. And that subtle difference makes all the difference. Think about a time you were anxious without knowing why. The mind spins, invents reasons, attaches to imagined catastrophes. It's unbearable. But then you realize, oh, I had too much coffee. Or, oh, I'm worried about tomorrow's presentation. The anxiety doesn't disappear instantly, but it softens. It feels less like a monster and more like a signal. Knowledge has transformed panic into something manageable. That's liberation, not from the feeling itself, but from the tyranny of not knowing. And clarity isn't just about emotions. It's about life itself. Spinoza wanted us to see how everything, every joy, every grief, every triumph, every stumble, follows from the laws of nature. Once you see the bigger picture, your personal storms feel less absolute. You realize you are not singled out for suffering, not cursed by fate, not abandoned by the universe. You are simply a part of the vast order of things. That realization can bring a deep calm, the kind that doesn't shout but whispers, "It's okay. This, too, belongs." In that calm, you start to experience what Spinoza called blessedness. Not the blessing of divine approval, but the quiet joy of understanding reality as it island. The more clarity you have, the less you feel buffeted by chaos, the less enslaved you are to passions. Knowledge becomes a kind of spiritual liberation, a light that turns storms into weather patterns you can watch, appreciate, and even smile at. So as you lie in bed, maybe with your mind still buzzing from the day, Spinoza invites you to gently trace your feelings. If you're restless, ask, where does this come from? If you're sad, ask, what is the cause? If you're happy, ask, what brought this joy? Each answer brings clarity, and each bit of clarity brings peace. That's the liberation he spoke of. Not freedom from life's ups and downs, but freedom in seeing them clearly. There's a certain absurdity in Spinoza's worldview that makes you laugh when you really think about it. He tells us we are not free, that our choices are determined, that we are modes of substance shaped by causes beyond our control, which means, in a sense, you are a very sophisticated meat robot walking, talking, making coffee, falling in love, and scrolling TikTok because of a long chain of causes, not because of some cosmic free will. And once you accept that, there's a kind of humor in it. Imagine looking at yourself from a distance. You see yourself trudging to the kitchen in the morning, hair wild, muttering about needing caffeine. You watch yourself pour the coffee, spill a little, and curse. You see yourself checking your phone, laughing at a meme, then forgetting why you walked into the kitchen in the first place. All of it is determined. Every action is part of the chain. From a Spinozist perspective, You're like a wind-up toy. Only instead of being wound up by a key, you're wound up by the infinite chain of nature. And that realization, instead of depressing you, can make you chuckle. Because here's the thing. If we're determined meat, robots, then so is everyone else. That rude person at the grocery store? Determined. That driver who cuts you off? Determined. That friend who texts you 3 paragraphs about their latest drama at 2 in the morning? Determined. You can start to see the comedy in it. We're all little robots bumping into each other, convinced we're autonomous geniuses, when in fact, we're just carrying out the laws of nature like actors in a cosmic sitcom. Spinoza himself had a reputation for being serene, even cheerful. He didn't rage against the idea of determinism. He saw the humor in human folly, in the way we think we're free while being carried along by causes we barely understand. He urged us not to scorn or weep at humanity, but to understand, and, I think, to laugh a little too. Think about how often you've said, "I'll never do that again," only to do it again the very next week. The midnight snack raid, the impulsive online shopping spree, the promise to go to bed early that somehow turns into watching a 3-hour documentary about mushrooms. You can laugh because Spinoza has already explained it. You didn't fail because of weakness of will. You acted as you had to, given your desires, your habits, your environment. You're not a bad robot, you're just a robot doing exactly what robots do. There's something oddly freeing in this humor. When you laugh at yourself, you stop fighting so hard. You stop expecting perfection. You see your quirks, your stumbles, your silly habits, and you smile at them. Instead of berating yourself, you say, "Well, that's the universe in action." And somehow, that makes the load lighter. It's like watching a pet chase its tail. You don't judge it, you laugh. Because it's endearing. Seeing yourself as a determined little meat robot lets you take the same gentle view of your own life. Yes, you chase your own tail sometimes. Yes, you repeat mistakes. But it's all part of the comedy of being human. Even bigger things, arguments, ambitions, failures can be softened by this perspective. If everything is determined, then the play of human life is less a tragedy and more a tragicomedy. We stumble, we fall, we argue passionately about pineapple on pizza, convinced we are defending eternal truths. From Spinoza's balcony view, it's all a bit funny. The humor isn't cruel, it's compassionate. It helps us forgive ourselves and each other. So Spinoza invites you to smile at your own robotness, to laugh at the way you say, "I'm going to live a disciplined life," only to find yourself binge, watching a show while eating chips, to chuckle at the way your emotions sweep you away, even though you know better, to grin at the way you and everyone around you is caught in the same web of causes. Laughter doesn't change the determinism, it just makes it easier to live with. So tonight, as you settle into bed, imagine yourself as a small, determined robot, powered by the infinite universe. You're not broken, you're not failing, you're just doing what you must. And maybe you can smile at that. Let go of the pressure to be more than you are, and drift off with a little laughter in your chest. Joy is one of those words that gets tossed around a lot, almost like glitter. It shows up in holiday cards, in inspirational Instagram captions, in the slogans printed on mugs you find in gift shops. But for Spinoza, joy wasn't a passing mood or a word to slap on a decorative pillow. It was a central part of his ethics, a guiding light for how to live well in a determined universe. Now, when most people first hear Spinoza's idea of determinism, that everything you do is caused by prior causes, that free will is an illusion, they think, well, that's grim. How can anyone be happy if we're just dominoes falling in a chain? But Spinoza flips the script. He says, joy isn't just possible under determinism. It's the only kind of real freedom we can have. For Spinoza, joy meant something specific. An increase in your power to act. An expansion of your capacity to live fully as part of nature. Think about what it feels like when you're learning, connecting, or creating. Maybe you're playing music and everything flows. Maybe you're cooking and suddenly the flavors come together like magic. Maybe you're laughing with a friend until your stomach hurts. In those moments, you feel expanded. You feel more alive, more capable, more connected. That's joy in the Spinozist sense, not fleeting pleasure, but the sense that your being is flourishing. Compare that to sadness, which Spinoza described as a decrease in your power to act. Think of the slump you feel after scrolling social media for too long, when envy and comparison have drained you, or the hollow exhaustion after arguing endlessly about something trivial. In sadness, your world feels smaller, tighter, more restricted. You feel less capable of acting well. Spinoza's ethics says, choose joy, not in the shallow sense of always be cheerful, but in the deeper sense of living in ways that expand your being, that connect you to understanding, that align with the nature of reality. And here's the twist. Because everything is determined, choosing joy isn't about conjuring it out of thin air. It's about learning to understand the causes that bring joy and the causes that bring sadness, and then arranging your life in harmony with those causes. It's a little like gardening. You can't will a tomato plant into existence by yelling at the soil, "Be joyful," but if you understand the causes sunlight, water, nutrients, you can create the conditions in which tomatoes grow. In the same way, you can't just command yourself, "Be happy." But if you understand what brings expansion, knowledge, love, creativity, you can nurture the conditions for joy. There's humor in this too. Imagine someone insisting they're free by declaring, "I can eat 12 donuts in one sitting if I want." And yes, they can. But after the 12th donut, are they joyful? Not really. They're determined by sugar and impulse. And they end up in sadness, stomachache, regret, perhaps an existential crisis about frosting. Spinoza would chuckle and say, that's not freedom. That's bondage to passion. Real freedom is arranging your life to increase your flourishing. Joy also connects to knowledge in Spinoza's system. When you understand the causes of your emotions, your world becomes less confusing. And confusion is one of the great thieves of joy. Imagine misinterpreting someone's silence as anger and spiraling into self-doubt. That's sadness born of confusion. Now imagine realizing, oh, they're just tired. Suddenly, the sadness lifts. Clarity restores your power to act. Understanding brings joy. And joy, for Spinoza, wasn't selfish. Because everything is connected, your flourishing is tied to the flourishing of others. You can't expand your power by crushing someone else's. True joy comes from relationships of understanding, generosity, and cooperation. Think of how you feel when you genuinely help a friend, not out of obligation, but because you want to. Their joy expands yours. That's the ethical life Spinoza envisioned. Individuals increasing each other's power to act through love and knowledge, not envy and domination. Living joyfully under determinism means aligning with necessity rather than fighting it. If you're constantly wishing reality were different, you live in sadness. If you understand and embrace necessity, you can find joy even in limits. Imagine going for a walk and it starts raining. You could shake your fist at the sky, shouting, "Why me?" Or you could remember that rain is part of nature, that it nourishes the plants, that it was determined to fall. You might even splash in a puddle, feeling the joy of being alive in the rain. The rain didn't change, but your relation to it did. This is why Spinoza called his ethics an ethics of joy. It's not about rules or commandments. It's about understanding what leads to flourishing and leaning into that. It's about laughing more, learning more, loving more, because those are the ways we expand our being, and it's about letting go of the illusion of total control so that we can actually enjoy the ride instead of constantly fighting it. So, as you lie in bed, think of joy not as something distant or mysterious, but as something available in small, determined ways. The softness of your pillow, the rhythm of your breath, the understanding that you are part of nature's infinite whole. Joy is not about conquering fate. It's about realizing that even under determinism, your life can expand in clarity, love, and connection. That is freedom enough. When you hear the word God, you might picture something familiar. A white-bearded figure sitting on a throne, maybe holding a staff, handing out judgments like a cosmic referee. This image has been passed down through art, culture, and religious traditions for centuries. But Spinoza came along and said, actually, no, that's not God at all. For him, God was not a person, not a judge, not even separate from the world. God, in Spinoza's philosophy, was the infinite everything, the substance of reality itself. To Spinoza, saying God exists was the same as saying the universe exists. God wasn't outside the world, tinkering with it like a watchmaker. God was the watch, the ticking, the gears, and the time itself. God was the stars, the trees, the oceans, the dogs chasing tennis balls, the Wi-Fi signals bouncing invisibly through the air. Everything you see, touch, think, and feel is God, because God is the infinite substance, of which everything is a mode. This was revolutionary. In the 1600s, most people thought of God as a ruler, a being with a mind and will, who performed miracles, issued commandments, and rewarded or punished. Spinoza stripped all that away. For him, God doesn't intervene in nature because God is nature. Lightning doesn't strike because God is angry. It strikes because that's what lightning does under certain conditions. To pray for God to suspend the laws of nature is like asking water not to be wet. Spinoza's God doesn't break laws. God is the laws. This view, called pantheism, scandalized his contemporaries. Some accused him of atheism. Because if God isn't personal, isn't listening to prayers, isn't handing out punishments, then what's the point? But Spinoza insisted he wasn't denying God. He was redefining God. For him, God was even greater than the personal deity people imagined. A God who is infinite, eternal, and identical with all existence is far grander than a bearded man upstairs keeping score. Think about what this means. If God is everything, then there is no place where God is absent. The tree outside your window? God. The laughter of children? God. The frustration you feel when your internet goes out during a video call? That, too, is God. Even the mosquito buzzing in your room at midnight is God, though perhaps God's most irritating form. This redefinition transforms spirituality. Instead of searching for God in temples, rituals, or supernatural miracles, you find God in the everyday. God is the order of the universe, the interconnectedness of all things, the laws that hold everything together. You don't need divine intervention because the miracle is that reality exists at all, unfolding in its infinite complexity. And there's humor in this vision. Imagine telling your cat that it's God. The cat would probably nod as if to say, "I already knew that." Spinoza's God isn't flattered by worship because worship isn't necessary. The infinite doesn't need praise. It's simply island, and recognizing that can be liberating. You don't have to anxiously wonder if God approves of you. You are already an expression of God. Because everything island, this doesn't mean Spinoza's God is indifferent in the cold sense. For him, God is the source of joy. Because understanding God, that is, understanding nature, brings peace. The more you see the order of things, the more you realize you are part of something infinite, eternal, and necessary. That realization can dissolve fear, soften anger, and replace confusion with calm. It also changes how you see morality. If God is everything, then good and evil aren't commands from above. They are about what brings joy and flourishing versus what brings sadness and diminishment. Ethics flows from understanding nature, not from obeying arbitrary rules. This makes morality less about pleasing a deity and more about living wisely within the fabric of reality. So Spinoza's God is not a distant ruler, but the infinite everything. A God who doesn't listen to your prayers, but who is the very breath you take while praying. A God who doesn't break the laws of physics, because God is physics. A God who doesn't punish or reward, but who is the unfolding of existence itself. And once you see God this way, you can find the divine in every moment. In the way the sunlight falls across your room, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the quiet hum of the world at night. God isn't elsewhere. God is here, now, everywhere, always. The infinite everything. If you imagine the 1600s, it probably doesn't scream peace and tolerance. It was a time of wars, persecutions, theological arguments that ended with people being burned at the stake rather than muted on Twitter. Into this world stepped Spinoza, the quiet philosopher with lungs full of glass dust, who dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, it would be nice if we stopped fighting about everything. Radical thought, right? He believed the path to political stability was through tolerance, democracy, and, in modern terms, chilling out. Spinoza lived in the Dutch Republic, which at the time was one of the more tolerant places in Europe. You could be Jewish there. You could be Protestant of different flavors. You could even be a Catholic, though people might eye you suspiciously, like someone bringing tuna salad to a picnic. Compared to other countries, the Netherlands was the laid-back friend who says, as long as you pay taxes and don't burn the place down, do what you want. But even in this relatively tolerant society, there were sharp limits. Religious authorities still policed ideas. Censorship was real, and dissent could land you in trouble. Spinoza thought intolerance was not just mean, it was dangerous. He saw how religious leaders, by claiming authority over truth, stoked endless conflict. One group said, "We alone know God's will." Another replied, "No, we do." And then came the wars, the executions, the suspicion. For Spinoza, this was madness. If God is nature itself, as he believed, then no sect can claim exclusive rights to truth. The only thing religious intolerance produces is chaos and fear. His solution? Let people think freely. Let them believe what they want, speak what they want, as long as they don't try to impose it by force. To him, freedom of thought wasn't just a luxury, it was the foundation of peace. The more you suppress ideas, the more resentment you create. The more you let people breathe, the more stable society becomes. It was common sense dressed up in philosophy. He extended this into politics too. For Spinoza, democracy was the form of government most in harmony with nature. Not because everyone is wise, he had no illusions about human brilliance, but because in democracy, power is shared. checked, and less likely to concentrate in the hands of one person or one faction. Think of it like distributing snacks at a party. If one person has all the chips, there will be arguments. If everyone gets a handful, fewer fights break out. Democracy, for Spinoza, wasn't about idealism. It was about pragmatism. People will disagree, passions will flare, conflicts will arise. But if you build a system where those conflicts can be expressed openly, managed fairly, and contained, you get peace. Suppress conflict, and it will burst out violently. Allow it to be aired, and it can be channeled into something productive. What's remarkable is how modern his political thought sounds. He basically argued that governments should protect freedom of expression, that religion and politics should be separate, and that the stability of the state depends on allowing diversity. All of this was centuries before such ideas became mainstream. He saw peace not as the absence of disagreement, but as the presence of tolerance. And here's where the chilling out part comes in. Spinoza didn't just want states to be tolerant. He wanted individuals to relax a little too. Stop treating every disagreement as an existential threat. Stop trying to control everyone else's beliefs. If your neighbor believes something different, that doesn't destroy your life. Let it be. If your friend interprets scripture differently, you don't have to duel them at dawn. Let it be. Peace begins when people stop clinging to the illusion that they can or must control the inner lives of others. Of course, Spinoza wasn't naive. He knew humans are emotional, that passions often override reason. That's why he thought laws were necessary not to impose dogma, but to create the conditions in which people could live together without killing each other. Laws, for him, weren't about enforcing morality from above, but about keeping the peace below. So, Spinoza's politics of peace was a blend of tolerance, democracy, and a kind of philosophical shrug. Don't panic about differences. Don't try to micromanage belief. Don't let one group dominate everyone else. Build structures that give space and encourage people to chill out. As you lie in bed, maybe remember Spinoza's calm voice whispering, "Peace isn't when everyone agrees. Peace is when everyone can disagree without destroying each other." And in that thought, maybe you can relax too, knowing that the possibility of peace isn't about perfection, but about space, tolerance, and balance. Stress is often born from feeling like the world is against you. You spill coffee on yourself before a meeting, and you think, "Why me?" You miss the bus, and it feels like the universe is plotting. You lie awake at night worrying about the future, convinced that everything depends on your fragile decisions. Spinoza's philosophy offers a different way to see it. He invites you to zoom out to see yourself not as a lonely individual struggling against the world, but as a part of nature, inseparable from the whole. And that shift, that cosmic perspective, reduces stress in a way no self-help slogan can. Think of yourself as a wave in the ocean. When you're focused only on yourself, you might panic about rising and falling, about crashing on the shore, about disappearing. But when you see that you're not separate from the ocean, the panic softens. You're not alone. You're a form. The ocean takes for a time. The wave rises, the wave falls, but the ocean remains. For Spinoza, this is what it means to understand yourself as part of nature. Stress often comes from the illusion of control. You think you must steer the universe, prevent disasters, and ensure perfect outcomes. But from Spinoza's view, the universe unfolds according to necessity. You are not an outsider trying to manage it. You are an insider, an expression of it. When you remember this, the pressure lifts. You don't have to bend reality to your will. You can flow with it, knowing you belong. Consider the things that keep you up at night. Money worries, relationship troubles, uncertainty about the future. From the cosmic perspective, these are not signs that you are cursed. They are natural events, expressions of the same universe that produces stars and galaxies. Your stress isn't an alien invader, it's part of the fabric of reality. And if it belongs, then you can meet it with less resistance. There's humor in this too. Imagine thinking the universe is plotting against you because you dropped your phone in the toilet. Really, it's not a cosmic conspiracy. It's physics. Wet hands, slippery grip, gravity, all part of nature. Once you see that, you can laugh. Instead of, "Why me?" you say, "Ah, yes, that's how the universe arranged it." The cosmic perspective turns calamities into comedy sketches. It also makes success less stressful. If you achieve something, you can enjoy it without clinging to it desperately. You realize your achievements are not the product of isolated willpower, but the unfolding of countless causes: your upbringing, your environment, your body, your society. This doesn't diminish your joy. It deepens it. You see your success as connected, not fragile. The cosmic perspective also reduces the stress of comparison. When you see yourself as part of the infinite whole, the idea of competing with others makes less sense. How can one wave compete with another wave? Both are the ocean. How can one leaf envy another leaf? Both belong to the same tree. Instead of feeling smaller, you feel included. Instead of envying, you appreciate. This perspective doesn't erase challenges. Life still has pain, loss, and difficulty. But Spinoza believed that understanding yourself as part of nature changes how you meet them. Instead of fighting reality, you align with it. Instead of resenting necessity, you accept it. Stress eases, not because problems vanish, but because your relationship to them shifts. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine zooming out. Picture yourself not as a solitary being burdened with choices and mistakes, but as a part of the infinite unfolding of nature. Your breath is the air. Your body is the earth. Your thoughts are patterns in the web of causes stretching back forever. You don't have to fight to belong, you already do. And in that belonging, you can rest. The real test of a philosophy isn't whether it sounds grand in a dusty book. It's whether it helps when you're stuck in traffic, dreading a meeting with your boss, or staring at an inbox that looks like it's auditioning for the role of infinite void. Spinoza didn't live in our world of emails and commute jams, but his philosophy is surprisingly practical when translated into daily life. His calm determinism and focus on understanding emotions can ease the very struggles that make us clench our teeth on a Tuesday morning. Let's start with the commute. Whether it's a line of cars inching along the freeway, a bus that smells suspiciously like last week's sandwiches, or a subway packed so tightly you learn way too much about the deodorant or lack thereof habits of strangers, commuting is a test of patience. Most people handle it with irritation. You mutter under your breath, grip the steering wheel, sigh dramatically, or fantasize about living on a remote island with no roads at all. But Spinoza would ask, what exactly are you angry at? If you pause, you see the causes. The traffic jam is determined by countless factors: accidents, construction, the design of the city, the laws of physics that prevent cars from occupying the same space at once. Your irritation is caused by fatigue, by expectations, by your desire to be somewhere else. None of this is random. It's necessity. And once you see that, the anger softens. You can almost smile, realizing this is how the universe is unfolding right now. Your choice isn't to stop the traffic. That's impossible. Your choice is whether to fume or to let the chain of causes carry you calmly. Maybe you even enjoy the time, listen to music, breathe slowly, or let your mind drift. The commute becomes less a punishment and more a moving meditation. Now consider your boss. Ah, yes, the boss. The person who sends you vague emails at 9 p.m., who micromanages one day and disappears the next, who somehow uses the phrase, "let's circle back," without irony. It's easy to feel trapped in a web of frustration. But Spinoza would again encourage you to look for causes. Your boss's behavior isn't the result of pure malice or randomness. It's determined by their own pressures, insecurities, upbringing, the culture of the company, the chain of causes that led them to where they are. Seeing this doesn't make their quirks less annoying, but it changes your reaction. Instead of personalizing it, "they're out to get me," you depersonalize it. They are a mode of nature acting according to necessity. It's hard to stay furious when you frame your boss as a complex domino in the universal chain. You may still roll your eyes, but the anger loses its claws. Then there's your inbox. Spinoza didn't know what an inbox was, but he would have loved the metaphor. A relentless flood of passions, distractions, and demands, each one tugging at you, threatening to enslave you. You open it, and suddenly you're drowning in unread messages. Panic rises. You feel guilty about what you haven't answered, resentful of what you must. Spinoza would remind you that this flood is determined too. The flood comes from systems, from expectations, from the very nature of modern work. Your reaction, however, can shift with clarity. Instead of being enslaved by the inbox reacting to every ding, every bold subject line, you can step back and observe. Each email is just a mode of substance, a little packet of determined necessity. You don't have to be swept away. You can breathe, prioritize, maybe even laugh at the absurdity of it. In all these cases, commute, boss, inbox. Spinoza offers a similar tool. Move from passivity to activity by understanding causes. When you're passive, emotions yank you around. Anger, irritation, stress, they enslave you. When you're active, you step back, see the causes, and choose a wiser response. The traffic jam is no longer an enemy, it's necessity. The boss is no longer a villain, they're a determined human being. The inbox is no longer a monster, it's just a river of causes. And you can dip in without drowning. It doesn't mean life becomes easy. Spinoza isn't promising miracles. You'll still sit in traffic, still attend awkward meetings, still face inbox avalanches. But your relationship to these events changes. Instead of constant resistance, you cultivate acceptance. Instead of slavery to passions, you nurture understanding. And in that, daily life becomes lighter, calmer, less of a grind, and more of a flow. So tomorrow morning, when you're gripping the wheel or staring at your screen, imagine Spinoza whispering, "It is all determined. You don't control the universe, but you can control whether you rage blindly or understand calmly." Then exhale, unclench your shoulders, and maybe even enjoy the absurd comedy of it all. Spinoza's determinism can sound heavy. Every choice, every thought, every emotion is determined by causes stretching back to infinity. But once you accept it, it becomes oddly funny, because the universe, in its seriousness, often arranges things in ways that feel like cosmic pranks. And humor, Spinoza might say, is one of the healthiest ways to live with necessity. Take destiny, for example. People talk about it as if it's a grand script written just for them. But if everything is determined, destiny is less like a carefully authored novel and more like Netflix autoplay. You thought you'd only watch one episode, But now it's 3 a.m., and the universe has decided you need to see how this detective show ends. Your choice was just the domino of autoplay, nudging you along. And once you realize that, you can laugh instead of scold yourself. You didn't fail. You were simply determined to watch 6 episodes. Congratulations. You fulfilled your destiny. Or consider kale chips. Someone offers you kale chips, and you think, I'm free to say no. But then you remember that last week you read an article about healthy eating, and your friend keeps raving about kale, and the store put them on sale. And suddenly, you're crunching on something that tastes suspiciously like disappointment. Free choice? Or determined chain? Spinoza would say the latter. And you can laugh at the irony. The universe, in all its vastness, arranging atoms and galaxies, has also arranged for you to be chewing kale dust off your fingers. There's also humor in realizing how often we resist determinism. You promise yourself, I will not text my ex. Hours later, your fingers betray you. You say, I will go to bed early. Suddenly, it's midnight, and you're watching raccoon videos. You insist, I will not buy anything frivolous. And yet, here comes the package with novelty socks featuring llamas in sunglasses. From Spinoza's view, all of this was inevitable, and instead of despairing, you can laugh at the determined little robot you are, carrying out the script of causes while thinking you're in charge. Even the big stuff, the life decisions, becomes comedic in this light. You agonize over which path to take, weighing pros and cons, feeling the weight of freedom. And then you realize, whichever path you take will be the one you are always going to take. The anxiety was just part of the script, too. Suddenly, the drama shrinks. You laugh, not because your choices don't matter, but because the illusion of total control is so exaggerated. You're not failing at freedom. You're living necessity. Humor doesn't erase determinism, but it makes it bearable, even joyful. Think of people arguing passionately over pineapple on pizza. Each side believes they're defending deep principles of taste. From Spinoza's balcony view, it's just determined creatures, shaped by upbringing and habit, arguing over fruit placement. It's absurd, and therefore hilarious. So next time you feel overwhelmed by life's seriousness, remember Spinoza. Remember that every snack choice, every binge watch, every late-night impulse is part of the infinite web. You don't need to scold yourself for being a determined little meat robot. You can smile, shrug, and say, well, that's destiny. Humor doesn't undo the causes, but it lightens their weight. And sometimes, laughter is the freest response determinism allows. Philosophies can sometimes feel like disconnected puzzle pieces. You hear about determinism. You hear about joy. You hear about acceptance. And they sound nice individually, but they sit in different corners of the table, waiting for someone to snap them together. Spinoza, in his calm, quiet way, did that snapping. He gave us a picture of life that looks at first like a stern geometry problem. But when you step back, the shapes form a soft, almost luminous vision of what it means to live. And here, as you drift toward sleep, is where all the pieces come together. Let's start with determinism, the backbone of his system. Every action, every feeling, every event is part of a chain of causes stretching back to eternity. Nothing comes from nowhere. The way you brush your teeth, the way you laugh at a silly meme, even the way you misplace your keys, none of these are random. They are all necessary. At first, this can feel suffocating, as if you're a domino with no wiggle room. But then Spinoza adds the next piece, joy. For him, Joy isn't a fluffy mood you chase like cotton candy at a carnival. It's a deep sense of flourishing, of your being expanding and increasing in its power to act. You don't create joy out of thin air. You find it in understanding. When you see the causes that shape your life, you stop thrashing against them. You stop demanding that reality bend to your whims. Instead, you align with it. And that alignment is what makes joy possible. So determinism doesn't destroy joy. It grounds it. If you thought freedom meant absolute randomness, life would be a constant anxiety about making the right choice. But if you realize your choices are part of a vast, interconnected necessity, then joy becomes about clarity, about living with your eyes open to the order of things. Instead of shouting at the storm, you learn to sail with it. And then comes acceptance, the final piece. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It's not throwing up your hands and saying, "Well, I guess nothing matters." For Spinoza, acceptance is active, joyful understanding. It's looking at the chain of causes, seeing how it shapes you and others, and saying, "This is what it means to be part of nature." Acceptance means forgiving yourself for mistakes, because they were determined, and forgiving others too, because their actions were as inevitable as tides. Acceptance means laughing when you spill soup on your shirt, because really, what else could have happened, given the state of your coordination and the slipperiness of that ladle? When determinism, joy, and acceptance weave together, you get a philosophy not of despair, but of peace. You don't control the universe, but you can find joy in being part of it. You don't master every passion, but you can accept them as natural and soften their hold through knowledge. You don't escape necessity, but you can align with it, relax into it, and even laugh at it. This synthesis is especially powerful at night, when the mind often resists rest. Thoughts loop, worries flare. You replay the day, regret a word, imagine disasters. But Spinoza would whisper, all of that too is determined. The replay, the worry, the restless tossing, it's all part of the same chain. And once you see that, the urgency drains away. You don't have to fix everything tonight. You can accept the chain and let it carry you into sleep. The way waves carry a boat. So tonight, as you breathe slowly, let the puzzle pieces merge in your mind. Determinism. Everything is necessary. Joy. Clarity. Expands your being. Acceptance. You belong to the whole, and nothing is outside of nature. Together, they form a picture that is not rigid, but gentle. Not cold, but warm. A philosophy that doesn't fight reality, but rests in it. And as you rest in it too, you may find that peace, the quiet joy of being a determined creature in an infinite universe, finally at ease. Now, at the edge of sleep, it's time to let Spinoza's philosophy guide you not into more thinking, but into rest. You've followed the ideas, traced the dominoes, laughed at the kale chips, nodded at the inevitability of raccoon videos at midnight. You've seen how determinism doesn't trap you, but frees you from guilt. You've felt how joy isn't an illusion, but an expansion. You've softened into acceptance. Now all that's left is surrender. The sweet surrender of lying back and letting yourself dissolve into the infinite whole. Close your eyes. Imagine the day as a long chain of causes, stretching back through morning, through yesterday, through centuries, all the way to the stars. Every moment that brought you here was necessary. You don't need to change it. You don't need to replay it. It has already unfolded exactly as it must. You can let it go. Feel your breath, rising and falling. Inhale, determined by your body's rhythm. Exhale, determined by the air flowing back out. Each breath is a mode of nature, part of the infinite system. You don't control it, you ride it. Let the breath soothe you, like gentle waves carrying you further from shore. Now imagine yourself as a small wave in the ocean. You rise with the tide. You fall with the tide. You're not separate, not lonely. You are the ocean in wave form. You don't have to hold yourself up. The water holds you. The universe holds you. You are safe in the whole, as thoughts drift in worries. Memories, flashes of tomorrow, see them too as determined ripples. They come, they go, they belong. You don't need to chase them. You don't need to fight them. Smile at them, as you might smile at children playing in the distance. Let them be. Let them pass. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed. The mattress holds you. Gravity holds you. The earth holds you. You are not falling. You are resting in the embrace of necessity. Every atom in you belongs to the infinite substance. Every heartbeat is the pulse of nature itself. You are not separate. You are not alone. You are the infinite, dreaming itself in human form. And as you sink deeper, let go of control. Let go of the need to steer. You are not the captain tonight. You are the passenger, drifting gently on the currents of nature. The dominoes fall, the waves rise and fall, the stars shine, the earth turns. Everything continues, and you are part of it. Spinoza would say this is blessedness, not fireworks or visions, but the calm joy of seeing that you are part of the infinite whole. Nothing is missing. Nothing is outside. You belong entirely, perfectly. Now, so let yourself drift, lighter and lighter. Surrender to the rhythm of your breath, to the warmth of your bed, to the vastness of the universe holding you. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to think anything. You are already part of everything. Sleep is not failure. Sleep is not escape. Sleep is the universe closing your eyes for a while, letting you rest, resetting the little wave that you are. Tomorrow will come. Determined, flowing, necessary. But for now, there is only this, the infinite, the calm, the slow drift into silence. And now it's time to let go of the day and drift into rest. Sleep well, and let Spinoza's calm vision carry you through the night. If you're still awake though, don't worry, you can keep the journey going by clicking on one of the 2 videos on your screen right now. Each one will guide you deeper into philosophy's gentle rhythms, and if you'd like more nights of calm reflection mixed with a little laughter, make sure to subscribe. That way, you'll never miss the chance to learn, smile, and drift off peacefully again.